Hey, good morning. Good afternoon. Welcome to our post InfoComm update. Not meant to be a Atlona commercial, but really what did us as AV industry professionals see this year at InfoComm? I've got a very prestigious panel of guests with me today. First, let me introduce Britt. Britt, come on in.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So, Britt, where do you work? What do you do?
Great question. I would love to answer that. I am Britt Yenser. I am the AV manager at Northampton Community College in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I am also the creator and host of the Brave Space podcast. You can find that on higheredav.com. I write a column for higheredav.com as well. And I am currently the HETMA communications chair, but will be transitioning to their board of directors as of July 1.
Congrats on that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Great. Now let's bring in Mike. Mike, please enter the studio.
Thank you. Glad to be here. So
Mike?
I'm Mike Peterson. I'm the audiovisual experience manager at Iowa State University, right in the middle of the country. Been here about 6 years, almost 25 years in Pro AV, and involved in a lot of works in a lot of ways. So glad to be here.
Yeah, you and I do some work at ETC. You're on the membership committee, and then we're also having a little show, I think, coming up in October.
A little shindig. Yep. So the ETC annual conference will be October 1st through the 4th here in Ames, Iowa. And so it's going to be an amazing event and everyone should attend. So look forward to seeing all of you there.
What I love about the ETC event is it's just like InfoComm, but it's just us AV education nerds, right? None of that commercial or live production stuff, just education.
Yep, it's smaller, it's intimate, lots of really in-depth conversation with people. It's an amazing event to attend.
Yeah, I did my first one last year with Dinner with Friends. So I'm looking forward to that one again. Maybe some slight changes of what I did from last year, but that if you haven't seen it, feel free to reach out to me or Mike. Happy to get you the information on it, and hope to see you in Iowa.
Absolutely.
And last but not least, let's bring in Chris.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Chris Decter, the manager of instructional technology at the University of Wyoming, but I think I'm actually here as the founder and host of the AV Super Friends to give the world's most honest opinions on higher ed AV technology.
Whether you like them or hate them, it doesn't matter. You can still yell at the radio or at your podcast screen, just like I do when I'm listening to AV Super Friends.
It's a valid response. Hate listens are a thing, so please feel free.
So let's talk about InfoComm. It's I guess back or still after post InfoComm or post COVID, although I did end up with COVID this year, as many of my teammates did. So if you ended up getting COVID, sorry. But it is a little different how they're reporting now. It used to be in years past, they would do all the registrations. And so manufacturer registrations, repeat registrations. So the numbers kind of got skewed if you go back to previous years. This year, it's verified attendees. So these are attendee numbers, not necessarily us vendors, but more like you guys. So a good mix of people. I saw a lot more end users this year than I remember in previous years. Our booth was crazy. What about you guys? I know we're going to talk about the education summit from HIPMA here in a minute, but what did you guys see kind of out on the show floor as far as coworkers or friends? Britt, we'll start with you.
I feel like these numbers that I'm looking at reflect the lived experience that I had. It definitely felt like a very full show, which is difficult to do with halls that large, right? Because it is a really large space, and then you're like, oh, there's a lot of bodies here. So it did feel like a lot, and it did feel like there were a lot of end users. And I can speak to what we experienced at the HETMA booth as well. We had a significant number of badge scans, and those are all end users coming to our booth.
Yeah, I love the HETMA theme this year, Viva Las Vegas, and we had Renelvis from Atlona do a great picture with Joe Way, so that was a lot of fun. Mike, anything that you experienced that was different this year or better?
No, I mean, so I've been attending the InfoComm show for over 20 years, right? And yeah, there definitely has been a significant trend, particularly over the last few years, um, of more end users, on the show floor, right? When I first attended InfoComm, probably would have been 2001. There were just not that many end users, right? It was integrators, it was manufacturers, and it was consultants, and that was it. A handful of other people, and that has just grown exponentially over the last few years to, again, as you can see on the screen there, almost a third of the people attending InfoComm this year were end users, and I expect that trend to continue as, in particular, more end users are wanting to get better trained, and this is an excellent place for them to get that training. And so, that's another reason why I think end users are going to continue to grow and come to the InfoComm show.
Great. And Chris, any initial feedback on your InfoComm experience?
I think it was a big show. There's a lot going on. To the comment about end users, the 30% number has been out there for a number of years. So I think that's pretty common these days for a lot of end users. I think they're getting better educated. I think they're getting better informed, and they know what they're looking for. So that's good to have the Mike. I'm surprised to hear you use the phrase end users. I know that makes you bristle, but I think that the end customers, maybe
Yes.
the local subject matter experts who have to make all this stuff work and have it last for years and years. I think there's some increase in the general knowledge base on that.
Well, and that's a good transition, right? Because did the higher education summit with HETMA the first 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, which in previous life, when I was an exhibitor, I had booth setup responsibility. I was, sweating my shirt through, especially with it being Vegas and no air conditioning. This year we were, over in the West Hall talking about leadership, talking about, how to build your own program and then how to use the students. So, Britt, we'll start with you with the leadership, because this actually was a quote that you gave me and I took as a little nugget home. It's you and I against the problem, not you versus me. So you want to elaborate a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah, thank you for keying into that. So, I really like the, framing behaviors and framing conversations as it's not you versus me, but us versus the problem, because it helps you to recognize that you are in alignment and it's not personal when you are dealing with a more difficult conversation. And that can come from a management perspective. It can also come from a conversation with end users, right? So if I'm working in higher ed, I need a classroom to work well. I want the classroom to work well, and so does the faculty member. So if there is something going wrong, it's not me versus this faculty member, but us together, because we both want the classroom to run efficiently and smoothly. So how can we together identify the problem and fix it?
Awesome. And then Chris, I'll throw this one to you for being the programming and design in-house, doing your own knowledge work. I think you're a big proponent of that as well in your facility, and it's something you talk about on the AV Super Friends as well, as basically being that in-house knowledge and working with consultants on new builds, working on integrators on new buildings, but then also providing that feedback back to the team as they're moving forward.
Yeah, any opportunity you have to get out in front of projects, and I'll credit Mike with some of this too. The phrasing of in-house integrator, to build that internal team, do as much work internally as you can. You don't necessarily have to tackle massive projects. We've got one going right now where I've got an integrator on campus, but because they can surge and bring the personnel and the labor force to get the work done. All the engineering, the design, the programming, that's all done internally, which drives the project. And then, partnering with integration firms or with consultants or wherever as needed for particular products, or projects rather. But for the most part, still driving those and being in charge of them, and build up your own expertise to be able to serve in that role. It's not a I'm just going to pick up a phone and call somebody else and outsource all that. I'm going to be part of that solution all the way through. whether it's a small conference room that we're building 100% internally with internal resources, or if it's a massive new capital project that's being done in partnership with outside integration and consultants, but we're still driving those projects from a knowledge and leadership perspective. So it's critical to do. It's anathema in my mind to hand that off and let someone else do it. So
yeah, and I really go ahead, Mike.
Your user experience is totally based upon the design and programming of the system, right? And so if you really want to manage your user experience, again, those are the things that you really, if you're gonna pull something in-house first, you should pull in that design work and that programming work, because that's where you're getting your user experience from. You can have any number of people pull cables or mount a projector from the ceiling, right? But if you really want to maintain that, what the users are seeing, feeling, making sure that's consistent across campus, that's that knowledge work that you need to maintain.
Well, and end users love change, right? They love coming into a brand new building and it's a completely different interface, right? With 273 buttons and certainly a power on and a call for help button, which is probably the first one they're going to look for.
Their favorite thing, all new things, right? So
awesome. And then Britt, I think you formed the last day. I had to skip out on the last day. Had to run over and do some booth training and get ready for the rest of the week responsibilities. But I think you led the discussions more on and using your student workforce for AV services.
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of moderating that panel. So in that, we talked about the life cycle of the student worker. And anyone in higher ed who works with students will tell you that hiring and working with students can be a significant workload. So we went over basically how do you do this from start to finish, from recruitment to training, recruitment, onboard, train. Eventually they graduate, or you might have to fire them, unfortunately. It happens. So just kind of talking through what that looks like, how to do that. And what was interesting about the panel was we had a variety of institutions represented. So learning how do you do this at a large school versus a small school, public versus private, and what are the differences in those institutions and what are the similarities among students just based on their age group.
Yeah. So again, shout out to all the people out there watching us. If you've got a facility that you're using student workers, or you got some feedback on that, would love to hear from you. This is not the Atlona show. It's not the EdTech VIP show. It's really an open discussion. So feel free to bring comments in. So that kind of wrapped up our HEPMA Education Summit. The next thing we did on Monday night was the Higher Ed AV Awards. And I really had a good time with this. It was at the Jimmy Kimmel Comedy Club, which is a great venue. Drinks were flowing. Good times were had by all. Atlona won an award for our VKP, which is a 8-button e-ink display. That one's actually been a lot of fun to work with the development team. Usually the sales team gets a product like right before the InfoComm show, right? We don't really get to provide any feedback or have any interface. And that's really been different for me. It's my time at Atlona where, I'm really interfacing directly with engineering and bringing this to market. Has an RS-232 port, can be programmed in the cloud, can be programmed locally, can also be an API for your QSC, BiAmp, Extron, pick your platform. Also at the award ceremony, was AV Designer of the Year. So, Chris, you took home an award.
Yeah, I'd like a recount on this. I don't know who this person. Yeah, so correction, Steve. I have not yet taken home my award because I don't know where it is. I wasn't there that night, so did not pick it up in person, and it was held for ransom all week, I suspect. But yes, it's nice to get some recognition there. I think everybody in that category does a fantastic job. Is really pushing the boundaries on what you can do in learning environments. And so it's humbled to be recognized there, and like to encourage others to make sure they throw their name in the hat. I also did not nominate myself, so I don't know who nominated. So thanks to whoever nominated me, and thanks for those who voted for me, because it wasn't me. So.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a popularity contest, but you know what? In our industry, that happens, right? Some of the awards are pay for play. Some of them you actually have to get awarded by your peers. And Britt, you also were an award winner for your DEI program for Brave Space.
Yeah, so Brave Space is my podcast on higherEdAV.com. It's also available on your popular podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple. And it is a DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion focused podcast where, I invite other AV professionals to join the space and talk about their experiences. And it's specifically called Brave Space because there's a difference between a brave space and a safe space. So a brave space is one where we consider the search for knowledge paramount, even if we feel uncomfortable in that conversation.
That's awesome, Britt. And I was appointed co-chair for the IDEA committee with ETC. So hopefully you can come join our little group and work with us as we move forward in ETC. We'll all be getting together in October here shortly. And then other awards, there were a bunch of them at the show. VKP and CS31 both won awards in addition to the awards we won from HETMA. Also, these are HETMA approved. If you're not familiar with the HETMA program, you can, as a manufacturer, submit products in. It's kind of a blind evaluation out of the box. Hey, does this work in their environment? And they write a report back. So as a manufacturer, if you're listening to this, I urge you to participate in that program. If you are an end user and you're looking for, hey, I really need an extender, I need a switcher, hey, take a look at those HETMA approved products and might find something you learn to love. Also, Elona, new landing page for education at lona.com/edu. So this is a new one for us. This will continue to be a work in progress. We have a room builder application. It'll be version 2 that will come up here not too long. But lots of stuff that will continue to add to this. There's a link down at the bottom. If you have an idea that you want for a product, or you want product management to look at, you want me to look at, you can submit the information on there. If you want to talk to an education specialist, that's on there as well. Basically it's a space where you can come and see specifically education focused products. And then the InfoComm booth. I guess I'm glad that InfoComm in the US is only 3 days. ISE is a show that's over in Barcelona. It's 4 days. I actually only did 2 days this year, and with coming in with COVID, I'm glad I wasn't there for 2 more days. But we did have kind of a neat thing. I thought I might kind of throw it out to the group and what else you guys are doing for esports. So we took the OmniStream product, right, as our networked AV, and we have this little logo, and we did a little bit of Rocket League. Now, coming into the show, I thought I was pretty good, right? I'd been practicing in my off time, but it was crazy what some of those professionals are, and I'll throw it out to the group. We'll start with Chris. You guys doing anything on esports yet?
Not really. There's been some light movement on campus, but nobody's being serious about it. So I am basically ignoring it at this point until they want to get serious about it. So in my mind, and I think this is an important distinction, a bunch of students putting together what used to be called 25 years ago a LAN party is not esports. Esports is much more regimented, and I think it's a fantastic opportunity out there because it drives academic scholarships. It drives, it ties into athletics at a lot of schools. It's a fantastic recruiting tool. I'm a little disappointed we've not been able to get a serious effort at it off the ground. But people make noise about it every year or so, and so eventually it'll get there. But nothing yet.
Britt, how about you? Anything at the community college level for esports?
Unfortunately, I have only worked here for like 2 minutes.
Yeah, you were really a new position for you.
I I'm not entirely sure. I will also say, to be fair, esports are not necessarily my passion, so I would be more likely to pass that off to another team member if that, rose up. We can only have so many gifts and interests. That's not mine.
And Mike, how about you?
So we did build what we call an e-gaming lab. So it's certainly not esports, right? It's more a fixed LAN party, as Chris referred to, right? For our, and this was through our rec services, so not through athletics at all. And so it's more of a student-centric, there's a couple of student clubs that operate out of there. So no, nothing too seriously yet, although that was a fun project, certainly, and ended up being a cool space. I will say, you asked about the community college level. There is a community college just down the road from us, Marshalltown Community College here in Iowa, and they have a very serious e-sports team there, right, that wins national level competitions on a regular basis, right? So, I mean, the community college level, they definitely can be a big player in this, and that's one of the great things about esports is you don't have to have the biggest budget to hire athletes or scholarship athletes to make that run, right? And so it's more of an equitable sport from that perspective. Big schools or community colleges can be very competitive at that. So.
Well, and we had some of the pros come over from, in fact, I think it was a couple of the guys that ended up winning the tournament that was sponsored by InfoComm. When we first had this concept, I reached out to a couple teams to get some pros to come in, and everybody's like, yeah, we got other commitments that we're doing. Come to find out it was, related to Avixa, but they came over to practice on our stuff. So I really enjoyed it. I am a big gamer myself. I was traveling one time with a coworker in an airport and was playing Minecraft on my tablet. And this little 8-year-old boy came up and I said, this is not at all creepy that, a 50-some-old man and an 8-year-old boy are playing Minecraft at an airport. But his dad was there and we chatted and it was a good time. But I don't envy having to set up this program because a lot of times you got to get approval, right? You got to get approval from deans, you got to get approval from management, and getting that money to dedicate to an esports lab can be kind of challenging. So that's one of the things that we took into account, right? Was rather than make an esports arena, what if you made a computer lab or you made a teaching theater that was, I guess, kind of a LAN party, but also has the ability to teach. And that's kind of what we were showing at InfoComm, is the fact that you can have built into the decoder, you've got the image processor, so you can do 4 screens. You can do a coach's station, so you could show the 4 different players showing, and the coach can see how they approach it. And then the coach can see how everybody's approaching that game. Or what we were showing at InfoComm was the player's face and their screen, which was kind of neat to watch the pros and how their face contorted and how they were using the screen. I think we've got a great little video that talks about from Paul Curzon, the product manager for OmniStream. Let's roll that video.
So OmniStream is our networked AV product line, and we're demonstrating it here in an esports application. So as you know, esports are a very popular topic in higher ed these days. And when you think about an esports venue, you have lots of sources and lots of displays. And being able to route all of that content over an IP network sort of gives you maximum flexibility in terms of how you design those spaces. What makes it great is you've got different, gaming stations where people are playing. And then I'm going to have different displays throughout the room. Maybe it's a coaching station, maybe it's a spectator display. And I need to be able to flexibly, pick any source and route it to any different display. Could be for a variety of different reasons. Could be to show something to a spectator, show something to a coach. And again, because you're routing it over the network, you're not having to deal with trying to build this sort of super large matrix type application, but instead you can just put all your sources on the network and then show them anywhere you need to. The ability to show multiple sources composited on a display together is built into the OmniStream decoder. So what makes this really exciting from a design standpoint is I mentioned all of those sources being available on the network. Well, now let's say I need to compare 2 different pieces of gameplay side by side, or I want to show the actual camera of the gamer and the game I can bring both of those streams into a single decoder, composite them on the display as a PIP or a quad view, and show them on a screen without having to add any additional equipment. Anywhere I put a decoder in the system, I have the ability to show those multiple pieces of content together. OmniStream has a few other features that make it really nice from an integration standpoint. For example, one of the things that we're able to do is with the encoders is provide thumbnail snapshots of the content that's being encoded. So from your touch panel, if you want to be able to select different sources to send to a display, you're actually seeing previews of those sources. Also, OmniStream is running on gigabit networks. So when we talk about scale, we talk about the number of sources or endpoints you might have in an esports application. Being able to run on a gigabit network makes the total solution more cost effective. And the last thing I'll mention is that we've got an open API. So we talk about controlling the product. Of course, it's a great fit with our velocity control system, but with our open API, you can integrate OmniStream in with any control system to operate your space.
Hey, Borg. I guess I'm pronouncing that right. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. I also love esports. So let's talk about what else we saw. You know, from the awards, there were a couple of best of product, right? The help me out here, Mike. The Epiphan.
Yep. So yeah, you know, again, it's to me, it was one of the best higher ed products on the show floor this year was the Epiphan Pearl Nexus. Their Pearl product line has been around for a while. Largely, they've had touchscreens on them, which didn't always fit into how higher ed people would want to use those products. And so this Nexus unit is essentially a Pearl Mini, but in a 1RU rack mount format. And to me, it can be a game changer as far as lecture capture and live streaming of classrooms. So I think that was a really great product.
So a question from Robert, any new technologies discovered that show that you'll be including in upgrowing projects? I think this is an interesting concept for InfoComm, right? Because based on the time of year it is, usually by the time you go to the show, hey, the installation season's undergoing, you've already made your decisions and you're going forward. Are there any projects that you guys are pivoting on to use a product you saw at the show?
I can speak from my perspective on that. I have not pulled the trigger, but I am tempted this fall to go in and rip out all my regular, everyday, normal microphones and put in one of the new Catchbox Plus systems. But I'm going to do it. If I do it, it'll probably be building wide, 25 or 30 of them in one shot, because I can. Just because it's an interesting product, and I like their rethinking of what is for most of us is probably pretty boring when you think about instructor microphones. And I like what Catchbox is doing with that, and I like their approach to rethinking what a microphone can be. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still an electrical component that is converting into sound waves into electricity for recording. But there's some interesting form factor changes there. So that's one I'm looking really hard at doing this fall as a retrofit in a brand new space because I can.
Well, we use those, I think, at the HETMA event, and it's kind of fun to throw the box around the room as well. And when you think of a 300-seat auditorium and throwing that thing, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, I should probably clarify, and I'm not talking about the sofa cushion microphones.
Oh, okay.
It's the same company, but they now have a line of lavalier microphones, which are similar to what the Rode makes them and others. You see a lot of the streamers wearing the little clip-on thing. They have a handheld adapter for that. They have a very, very slick all-in-one kind of receiver, DSP, AV bridge, which is a nice little box for the right use case. So again, I like that they're rethinking what a microphone is. We all put microphones in, and we do it as part of every project. And I like that they're trying to make some waves in that field. So.
Is that, like Justin mentioned, a one-way Bluetooth product, or is it more the DEC frequency? No,
they are using DECT, so it is not going to be stolen by the FCC yet. But that'll happen. But yeah, so the one-way Bluetooth that we discussed on AV Super Friends, so free plug avsuperfriends.com, the best podcast in higher education. We discussed Bluetooth assisted listening systems, which are starting to sneak out, because the good news is on this, there is a new standard from the Bluetooth Special Interest Group to encompass Bluetooth broadcast, basically. Because if any of you have talked with any students who are hard of hearing, they don't like the systems that we install in classrooms. They don't like the IR systems. They don't like the T-coil systems. They don't like the RF systems. They do not like the Wi-Fi systems. They want to use the systems, the equipment they're already carrying with them, which is either their specialized hearing aids, which most of which are Bluetooth compatible already, or their phones, and adapt that out. So it's nice to see that the Bluetooth Special Interest Group is moving towards that with the support for Bluetooth broadcast. It'll be used in tours and other things, and it's going to have a lot of hardware partners that are going to need to light that up. But the apparently the newest smartphones, Galaxies and Pixels and iPhones already support it. It's not yet enabled, but the chipset they're all using does support that. So interesting to see what the take up is on that. I'm hopeful that will be fast take up and not something that takes 10 years to get here, but we'll see how that goes when you're working with lots of hardware partners. I'm sure that's a big lift. So.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Anything else from the field? I didn't see any other questions or products or cool stuff they saw. Feel free to fire those in as we continue on. I wanted to talk a little bit about the CS31, which was new at InfoComm this year. We have now added a USB-C input and an HD-based T input. So it'll be available in 3 flavors. So this is really a 3x1 all-in-one switcher. So it's got the amplifier built in, so it's going to duck your program audio with mass communication contact closing from a PA feed. AEC, there's going to be a future mic input, or the mic input is there, but for future use. Stay tuned for that one. So nice little thing coming up. Let's talk about EDU and collaboration. You know, I'm not a big fan of the Teams rooms. I know Chris and some of the others are also not a big fan of Teams or Zoom rooms, but Team and Zoom, Panopto, Epifan, all of that recording, streaming, that collaboration portion of the classroom, in my opinion, is here to stay. Mike, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on these collaboration technologies?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting, right? I mean, certainly, you know, there was plenty of funding to, you know, in the midst of COVID to push and add these technologies to all these classrooms. Personally, you know, while the technology now is in the rooms, I think the actual uptake of instructors using said technology hasn't followed suit nearly as much. I think there's still a significant number of faculty who like butts in seats, right, and want to teach that way. And certainly schools, including Iowa State, you know, certainly one of our calling features is the in-person class experience. That's what we promote. And so, you know, not to say that we also don't have, you know, online programs. We certainly do, and excellent ones at that. But, you know, from an undergraduate perspective, you know, we really are continuing to try and promote that. Hey, come to campus, be a part of the campus experience, the student life, all that aspects of that, and including that in-classroom experience. So I'll be curious. And to me, it's a curiosity. I think that, to me, the jury's still out, right? I mean, is it going to go away? No, it's not going to go away. Are we going to see every class everywhere using this technology? No, I don't think that that's going to be the case. So
interesting.
We'll
I was at an institution and they had an A day and a B day. And so students basically alternated and allowed them to go to more students per classroom, which I think, you know, again, it's at butts and seats, but it's also dollars in the bank account. So it gave them a bigger bank account for the classroom space. But what they were finding is about half of the students on A were doing that home or online portion, and then half of the room on B days were doing at home. So it was really kind of like an A group in class, a B group in class, and a C group who was visiting online. And I thought that was an interesting thing. And an interesting way to kind of increase that revenue, because again, you don't have to have as much space for a classroom, and you can teach to more students, puts more demand on the instructor. So then you do like a secondary instructor to help the grading and all that. Could be an interesting concept. But Britt, your thoughts on this collaboration space?
Well, there are two things I would invite people to consider. One is that we talk a lot about what happens in a typical classroom environment, but we should also consider, even if the faculty are not interested in having students join remotely, they might be interested in having guest presenters or lecturers join remotely. We are more and more living in a global world. And so opening up the opportunity to easily invite people from other locations to the classroom can be a really valuable learning experience. And the other is to not to sleep on huddle spaces. I like huddle spaces not just for collaboration, for group work with students and things like that, but also to create a space on campus where students can go and easily do video conferencing independently. Because I don't know if anyone has done an interview for a job recently, but the first round is always video conferencing. So, eventually you're going to have your students looking for full-time employment or graduate programs that might require them to do a video conferencing experience. And if you can provide a really nice space for them to do that and give them the leg up in that interview experience, that's like a really powerful thing that you could do.
Yeah, if we all had Chris's studio for doing interviews, man, imagine how much you would stand out. So, Chris, other than your podcasting studio, thoughts on the collaboration topic?
Yeah, I had someone earlier this spring ask me, are we still building hybrid classrooms? And I said, no. And they were surprised. And I said, because there's no such thing. It's called a classroom. So, and to Britt's point about, let's say, informal learning spaces, at this point, in my opinion, it's an easy choice. You Zoomify, and I use that term generically. I'm trying to Kleenexify that word. You Zoomify every space you can. I don't want to be the one telling someone they can't teach that way, or they can't bring in a guest speaker, or they can't record their stuff. So it doesn't have to be specifically for hybrid or high flex teaching, which are not the same thing. Check those definitions. But it should provide the capability. It's just like we put a projector or display in every classroom. They may not use it. They may want to go in and have a discussion as part of a seminar class. The AV is still there. Providing that capability provides the same hardware you need for capture, for recording, for streaming, for whatever that may be. So that's just part of a classroom these days. I will say, however, and I'm waiting for this one to come back around, I had the first department in 3 years say they did not want Zoom capability in their classroom. I'm like, great, there's no Zoom in that room. And I'm waiting for spring, or classes start in the fall, when they say, oh, can we get Zoom in here now? So that'll be coming. But yeah, there is no, in my opinion, there is no hybrid classrooms anymore. They are just classrooms. They all include the necessary equipment to do it. Costs have come down. Complexity has come down. Usability is improved. You can streamline these systems and do very capable systems for not a huge outlay on cost that can do everything that would require, a full built-out 323 system with full operators years ago. You can do all that now for a fraction of that, and it's just people expect that, I think so.
Awesome. Douglas says, hand them a webcam, and they'll be happy. But
Doug, you're not wrong. You can certainly, a webcam is a good first start, and I think that is a perfectly valid solution for step one, as long as you have a step two for a better experience coming down the road. But webcam, you can get that in there in 10 minutes and away you go. But, there's going to be additional things that you'll need to think about. So.
And I know this company at Lona that's got a great little speakerphone and webcam. Might work. So I want to thank my guests for joining me today. This has been awesome. I'm so glad to be on the road of recovery for my COVID exposure. This was my first, and hopefully will be my last. So I guess I'll just wrap up. Any parting comments from the group? Anything you meant to ask, or meant to conclude, or meant to contribute? Feel free.
No, I just want to thank you for inviting us, right? It's always good to have these conversations and, share some of our insights with others. So appreciate the invite.
Thanks, Mike. Look forward to seeing everybody at ETC in Iowa. And I'm trying to think, what is the local food up there?
Oh, it's the United States, so whatever flavor of food you want, right? You can come here and find, right? But there's a barbecue joint or a couple of them that are pretty popular around here, and the food of particular interest, I think, for Iowa is the breaded pork tenderloin sandwich, which is this flattened pork tenderloin, breaded, deep fat fried. That's twice as big in circumference as the bun, and you put it in a bun and you eat that, and it's good stuff.
That'd be
Mike,
like
what about the butter cow? Are you guys going to do that?
Well, yeah, at the Iowa State Fair, there's always a life-size cow made fully of butter on display by the Dairy Council of Iowa. And so actually the butter cow has its own Twitter account associated with it, right? So yeah, but no, I don't think we're going to have one at the ETC conference itself. Something to think about, though.
Yeah, I think if you brought that into Texas, you would end up with melted butter. I think it's supposed to be 110 today on a heat index. So, all right.
Is it fair to say I'm only going to come to the ETC thing if you have a structure made of butter? Like, I now have this expectation.
You got to think.
You can have that expectation. I'm not sure it'll be fully realized. So let's just put it that way.
Maybe like a projector of butter, or an AV Super Friends or Brave Space logo in butter. Yeah, it could be fun.
I'll sponsor that. Yeah, I want the AV Super Friends logo made out of butter. Mike, make it happen.
All right. We'll see what we can do.
Well, roll credits. Thanks, everybody. It was a great time. Don't forget to sign up for EdTech VIP. Lots of great programs, more stuff coming on the portal. And with that, have a great day.